Welcome aboard the Emirates Airline. For your safety and comfort, we request that you remain seated at all times. Thank you and enjoy the flight.
Welcome to your northbound flight on the Emirates Airline. On your journey, you'll be surrounded by unique views and some of London's great untold stories. Here's just a few of the sights and discoveries that await you in this fascinating area of London. The Emirates Airline is the latest way to cross the Thames. Rising to 90 metres at its peak, it's also the highest. But in 1843, hidden from view just beyond the buildings of Canary Wharf, a Thames crossing opened at 23 metres below the river's surface.
We are now sitting in the grand entrance hall to the 8th wonder of the world. This is Isambard King of Brunel's first project. It's the first tunnel under a river anywhere in the world. And today, it is the oldest tunnel in the London Underground. It opened in 1843 as a pedestrian tunnel. And you have to remember, the idea of walking under a river the size of the Thames is like walking on the moon. And on the first day, there are 50,000 visitors, and the band of the Coldstream Guards played patriotic music. In its day, this was the world's most successful visitor attraction. What Brunel did here, he created a cage for the miners to work in. This is the worst job in the world. They are showered in sewage, but they only work 2-hour shifts. They collapse after 2 hours, and they're carried out, and they're replaced by men who are still breathing. That's pretty much what they do even today. This principle has simply been automated. Brunel had miners, whereas Crossrail have tunnel boring machines. Brunel had bricklayers. Crossrail has precast concrete sections. This is the birthplace of the tube.
Looking east away from the city, you can see another impressive feat of British engineering, the Thames Barrier. It's one of the largest movable flood barriers in the world and has been protecting London for more than 30 years.
The original design criteria was to protect against the 1 in 1,000 floods in the year 2030. So they used the data they had available and they projected that into the future, and they built extra safety margins in. It looks like we'll be okay until 2070. The barrier is composed of 10 gates, the largest of which are 3,300 tons, approximately a third of an Eiffel Tower's worth of metal in each one, and they rotate into position. The barrier protects against an area of land with about 1.25 million people. If you're walking along the south bank, if you can imagine another 3.5 metres of concrete obstructing your view, that's what the barrier protects against.
The Port of London has been a centre for trade since Roman times. By the 1800s, it was the busiest port in the world, and a series of huge enclosed docks were built, surrounded by high walls, to protect cargo from thieves and pirates. The docks stretch from Tower Bridge to City Airport, and the Museum of London Docklands is preserving the history of this crucial trading hub.
The building we're sitting in was built in 1802. When it was built, it was the biggest warehouse in the world. The Romans first settled on the Thames, and obviously the Vikings came after the Romans. And all throughout history, there's always been lots and lots of trade. There was loads and loads of privacy. In actual fact, there's a gibbet cage in the museum, and he wasn't executed in the gibbet cage. He was hung, and then he would have been cut down, and then he would have been put into the gibbet cage. And there was accounts of 4 to 5 bodies hanging quite along the foreshore. So as the shipping were coming in, that was like a deterrent. You behave yourself, or otherwise this is going to happen to you. Warehouses played a very important part in the war, because if you knock out the infrastructure and you kind of starve the nation out. Now you can imagine the ferocity of the bombing, and sometimes you had the sugar going up and catching light, and then at the very end of the buildings you had the rum going up and catching light, and it would actually make slab toffee. And all the children would be around the following morning scooping it up, taking it home. You can come to this area and you can walk around and you can see where all these things happen.
The East End docks have undergone major redevelopment in recent decades. Royal Victoria Dock is now home to XL London, one of the largest exhibition centres in Europe. King George V Dock has become the grounds for City Airport. The Royal Albert Dock to the north of the airport is next for redevelopment.
Royal Albert Dock used to be the commercial centre for the British Empire. Beef used to come from Argentina and other places, and it went on trains into London. But this was the meat store when the meat first came off the ships. This is going to be an Asian business port. Companies from Asia will be able to set up their headquarters and trade into Europe. The city airport will allow business people to travel to and from European cities right here into Royal Albert Dock. Business leaders will be able to attend meetings in Paris and within 2 hours be back at their desks here in London. When this complex is finished, there will be 20,000 people employed in this area. And we'll be invigorating this area, we'll bring it alive again. It really is going to be very exciting.
Down below, the River Lee flows into the Thames on its northern bank, after rising near Luton more than 40 miles away. The lower River Lee Valley has a rich history of engineering innovation, with more industrial achievements for its small geographical size than anywhere else in the world.
The history of this area, of course, has been about entrepreneurs and innovators. It was a group of entrepreneurs who built the Royal Docks. The Lower Lee Valley is where Michael Faraday did his electrical experiments. And just across the way here is where Brunel built the biggest ship in the world, the Great Eastern. And this place, of course, for 150 years, drove the economy of this country.
The post-industrial revolution, the electronic technological revolution, began in the Lee Valley in 1904 by a man called Professor Ambrose Fleming, and he invented a thing called the diode valve. All the electronic gizmos we have today can be traced back to this single, simple device. The first jet airliner, the Comet, was built at Hatfield here in the Lee Valley. Thornley and I Ferguson invented the first ever colour television. But we had the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield. The Lee Enfield rifle was produced there. It wasn't Burton-on-Trent that made India Pale Ale. India Pale Ale was invented in London's Lee Valley by George Hodgson. So we've got a lot to thank the Lee Valley for.
Next to the Emirates Airline terminal is the Crystal, a building owned and operated by Siemens that was designed to be one of the greenest in the world. The Crystal showcases sustainable development and contains the world's largest permanent exhibition of its kind.
We are in one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. It demonstrates innovative technologies to do with generating energy by solar and ground source heat pumps. Even the water of the toilets is being recycled. This exhibition showcases existing technologies and innovation, and also stimulates discovery. It tries to make people imagine how their city might look by the middle of this century.
Thank you for flying the Emirates Airline. Exit here for the XL Exhibition Centre, the Crystal, Royal Victoria Docks and the DLR. Oyster, return and single ticket holders, please alight here and exit to the left. Welcome aboard the Emirates Airline. For your safety and comfort, we request that you remain seated at all times. Thank you and enjoy the flight.
Welcome to your southbound flight on the Emirates Airline. We'll soon be at a cruising altitude of 90 metres, higher than the top of Tower Bridge. The Emirates Airline links the Royal Docks with the Greenwich Peninsula, and on this flight will help you to discover a fascinating corner of one of the most exciting cities in the world. Just a few miles to the northwest is the London 2012 Olympic Park. The Games were an enormous success, watched by more than 3 billion people globally. And huge efforts have gone into making sure the Games leave a powerful legacy for future generations.
Competing at the London Olympics 2012 was one of the best experiences of my life. If I could go back and do it again, I would do it 1,000 times over. As soon as I stepped in there, the roar was just electrified. And the noise got louder and louder, and just all the hairs in my body just lifted up. I think my dad shed a little bit of a tear, but he doesn't like to admit it. The support the British athletes got, the support every athlete got, was just immense. Anyone and everyone involved loved it. They'll recollect that memory as one of the biggest days of their lives. And hopefully, I can share this memory and inspire the next generation of athletes coming through.
The Olympic Park is a catalyst for the regeneration of large parts of East London. It continues from the Olympic legacy. There are opportunities for people to take part in skills and training programmes. It's a fantastic green space and a great place to just come and explore.
Beneath our flight path is the distinctive red lightship at Trinity Buoy Wharf, where the Thames is joined by the Lee Valley River. Michael Faraday, one of the world's most important scientists, had a workshop at the wharf, and it's still home to creative thinkers and artists.
We're at the Barker Generations chain store in Trinity Buoy Wharf. Parkour is largely about relative challenge, so it's never about just doing the biggest jump that anyone can, it's more about challenging yourself. And we've got this incredible facility to train at, and it's such a positive thing to have. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the space can do for the community. If you come from East India Station to here, there's all kinds of incredible installations, strange little pieces of street art, which kind of ties in quite well to parkour.
Yeah, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful people doing interesting things down here.
I made the fishing as a temporary measure, and then someone was asking about a commission for a circus, so I thought I'd knock it together just to show them what they could have.
We've spent the last year really taking rubbish aircranes and trying to make saleable products. We made this rickshaw, which is obviously made from the fuselage. We're also making a DAB radio using the main thrust control, which is very exciting. Trinity Buoy Wharf feels like the last corner of old London. In a way, it feels like a little bit of industry coming back to what is historically a really industrial place.
The Docklands area of London went into decline after the Second World War. But in the 1980s, there was major new development here, and the business district of Canary Wharf rose into the sky. It now contains many of the tallest buildings in the UK, and more than 100,000 people work in the district.
The original idea of Canary Wharf came about by accident. The government had invited down a guy called Michael von Clem, who was a banker, but was really looking for a site for a factory. And he looked around and he said, well, actually not a great site for a factory, but he knew that banking was changing and he was going to need massive trading floors for his bank. And that's where the idea came from.
Canary Wharf allows London to have a modern face because so much of London that we love is preserved and we like it to stay preserved.
Canary Wharf is the fastest growing and largest new business district in Europe. When it is completely built out, there'll be about 25 million square feet of space. And in terms of the working population, there'll be about 200,000 people.
Crossrail, when it's fully operational, will bring a whole new working population to Canary Wharf.
Lots and lots of exciting developments have happened in the east side of London, and all linked by the Docklands Light Railway, by the Jubilee Line, by Crossrail, by all the other transport infrastructure that links into those. The Docklands Light Railway trip through Canary Wharf has been listed as one of the 10 great railway journeys of the world. It is one of the great regeneration projects of the last century.
The River Thames has been the lifeblood of London since Roman times, and trading ships have plied its waters for centuries. As the size of ships increased, they needed powerful tugboats to guide them. Despite the demise of the old docks, the tugs and their skippers are still the workhorses of the river.
I'm probably the oldest tug skipper on the River Thames at the moment, but we still go out and do a day's work. Oh, changes are unbelievable. In fact, you could walk one end of the dock to the other end of the dock on barges. We could tell where we were by the smells on the River Thames then day. You knew it was a soap factory, you knew you were at Headley's. Then you come to Perfect Reach and you could smell all the oils. And then as you come round Thames Walk up around there, you can smell the sewage. Right up until when you got to the Pepper House or Wapping, you knew it was a spice field. But not now, different today. All them days are gone. That's when men were made of iron and both were made of wood.
Traditional tugs have now been joined by a fleet of fast catamarans. Thames Clippers carry thousands of passengers every day.
The boats go at 30 knots, so approximately 40 miles an hour, so probably one of the fastest modes of transport in London. The river bus service runs every 20 minutes to North Greenwich Pier, which is just a 5-minute walk from the Emirates Airline. Now coming into Greenwich, you should probably see the Royal Maritime Museum. It's a fantastic location and it's just an 8-minute trip from North Greenwich. I think the river's got a key role to play for the regeneration of East London. We very much see the Thames as a tube line in the future.
The Greenwich Peninsula is home to the O2, the world's most popular music and entertainment venue. The area is soon to undergo major redevelopment, creating a vibrant new district covering almost 200 acres. It's one of the largest regeneration projects in Europe.
One of the great things about the peninsula is that it is actually an island site. You have 1.5 miles of uninterrupted river frontage. Obviously the O2 attracts 15,000 people a number of nights a year. Dragon is a Hong Kong-owned development. It's one of the biggest regeneration schemes in the country, not in Europe. You will probably realistically be looking at least 20,000 people living here permanently, 20,000 people working here. So from a community point of view, it's going to offer something we think is going to be unique in the London landscape.
Cutting through the peninsula, the Greenwich Meridian Line represents 0 degrees of longitude. It divides the eastern and western hemispheres of the Earth and serves as the reference point for the world's clocks. It's also the inspiration for a new world-class sculpture trail, the Line, stretching more than 3 miles from the O2 to the Olympic Park.
The Line is a project that will be bringing contemporary art into the Greenwich Peninsula and the Royal Docks. There are 2 works that have been on the Greenwich Peninsula that were commissioned for the millennium. There's Richard Wilson's A Slice of Reality, which is a cross-section through a ship. And then there's Anthony Gormley's Quantum Cloud. It's made of thousands of steel rods, and you can see this elusive figure hidden within this cloud. And if people are wanting to continue the walk, there'll be work along the River Lee and the canals, which is another extraordinary walk, an undiscovered gem.
Thank you for flying the Emirates Airline. Exit here for the Emirates Aviation Experience, the Thames Clipper, the O2 and transport links. Oyster, return and single ticket holders, please alight here and exit to the left.